About now.
Oh,
Hey, everybody.
thanks.
Welcome back to the Gold Mine. I cannot wait to get this started. It has been a long time coming. We got Clay here, also known as Salty Jinx. We got Seb here. We got Shaun here. I am stoked. Well, I am excited, though. Y'all should be too. Make sure you're doing the things like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays on the Gold Mine and Fridays for the Collective. If y'all have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, hit us up in the comment section. We can engage those right away throughout. Today, we're going to be talking about putting in the work, and I am excited to get this started. But before we do, let's get some intros. Clay, I'm going to start with you. 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff. Give her.
Clay Ward. I got just under 23 years with the Green Army, Canadian Armed Forces, and I have made the last 3 years of my life being a dude doing good things.
I like it. Seb, yourself? How's life out there?
Life is great, man. Happy to be here, and I wouldn't have missed the Salty Jinx Collective or Gold Mine debut.
This is the beauty of it all, right? Shaun, how's life out in the mountains right now?
Things are good. As I was listening to the intro to the show here, I was thinking yeah, this is obviously a result of a lot of work. I mean, your delivery was smooth and polished. It was like bing, bang, boom. It was as it has been for some time now. And then what's the outcome that we've got? Well, we've got Seb on, who is generally what I consider as the OG of the show and or of the collective / the Gold Mine podcast scenario. And then we've got Clay, who I feel like is the shadow warrior of the show, who has been in the game right from the get-go. And so I just like the confluence of how this has all come together. You know, you coming in large and in charge, the boys, it just feels right.
It feels right indeed. I cannot agree more in the moment. Now, before we get into the videos that I have, I want to ask you guys, are there any thoughts or anything that you guys want to express before we go on? Clay, any thoughts or anything before we get started?
Actually, at this point, I'm just I'm really kind of stoked to be here. Glad I kept this promise to Seb. And let's just kind of let it go.
Awesome. Seb, any thoughts before we get started on this? Everybody good? Shaun, you ready? All right, let's kick into this first one. This is set up so that the three videos kind of stage off of each other in the development of the work. So here we go.
Thing is that the battles you refuse to fight, your kids will have to fight. Your inability to confront lust means your son's gonna have to fight that battle. Your inability to confront insecurity means your daughter's gonna have to fight that battle. Your inability to break the cycle of divorce and addiction off your family means your kids are gonna have to fight that battle. And I'm here to announce to you that it's time for you to begin to arise and fight. It's not time for us to back down. It's not time for us to walk away. I wanna ask you, how many more generations is the enemy gonna take out in your family till you stand up and say enough is enough?
Bam. Started off large and in charge. Clay, first thoughts on that? What do you got?
Wow, I think that was bang right on. I'll use myself as an example, right? Everybody who's like the 400 or 500 people that have actually paid attention to my account or my feed over the last 2.5, 3 years. I fell into that trap of not showing up, not doing the things that were hard and not carrying on. And it was something that I saw perpetuated in like my kid, the rest of my family, and other places. And when I started to make those corrections in myself, I saw those corrections made across the generations, right? Like I saw my kid making those changes. I saw other members of my family making changes. I saw friends start to make changes. And then we kind of like fed off of each other on it in a positive way and push it forward. If you're not willing to show up and do that stuff now, right? It's like you pick your heart. You either do it now and you be deliberate and you choose it, or you're left with the want and need for somebody else to take up that harness for you later on because you've left it on the ground, right?
100%. Seb, thoughts on this?
Yeah, just talk is cheap, right? And we know that, and we can spend all day, all year, and all of our free time to teach the kids, but really what they're doing is looking. They're looking at what we're doing. They're looking at what we're demonstrating, and they're replicating. They're parrots. They're parrots more than they have the ability to formulate their own opinions based on skills, knowledge, and abilities that they haven't yet acquired. And so they have, for a certain time, they have to sort of be in a repeating pattern. They have to look at what's being done and how it's being done by the people they respect the most. And so definitely, if you're teaching something but doing something else, it just isn't going to work the way you intended to. I would say that, taking all the battles away from them isn't the fix either, but it's really striking that balance.
Balance, I like it. Shaun, thoughts on this?
I can't understand or explain why my mind does what it does when I listen to people talk, but here's the image that popped into my head. So, and it's based on what Clay and Seb just said, and I think that Clay was referring to almost like be the change that you want others to become, or demonstrate the right path forward so others can pick up what you're putting down. Generally, that's what I took away from Clay, and I've seen him do that day after day ever since I bumped into him on social media. And then Seb said, like the best thing that you can do is be the opposite of talk is cheap. Stop talking, just do. Represent the action, don't talk about the action. And so through that demonstration of I do this on the daily, you don't have to follow me, but this is what I do. That generally creates mimicry, or someone sees it and they want to try it. And so the vision in my head that snapped into place was kind of like a bunch of little chicks in a nest. You got the mother bird, she's flying in and out, she's feeding them and all of that good stuff. But at the end of the day, the chicks just sit there, chirp, 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 and they're looking for guidance. They're looking for a way out of the nest. They don't know whether they should just jump out and hurtle to their death, or is there a time when I'm supposed to try this? That's all through mimicry. That's all through mirroring actions of others that are successful. Now, that's not that impressive, what just popped into my head. It's the follow-on that made the difference for me in the vision. What kind of bird are you? And so if you're a starling, or if you're a parrot, or whatever you are, and you're on your branch and you're observing the world and you're just parroting things that you see in the world, you're just chirping to make noise, but you're not really seeing the world deeply or like a hunter. So what I saw was two birds sitting next to each other, a parrot and a falcon. A falcon doesn't make a whole lot of noise. It just uses its hunting gaze to observe the world, target lock on things, and considers them whether they're worthy of its flight time. And so falcons don't just like spool around, just wasting their energy. They have a couple of eyes that hawk the world. And so I think that maybe a little bit of a message that is being missed out there in society is don't just copy, or don't just mimic. Don't use your time wantonly or carelessly. Take some time to apply a hunting gaze on what you're about to enter into. Be a falcon in your mind. Hunt what you want, then observe it for a while, and then make your actions. That's the vision that popped in my head.
I like it. I really like the see the world, like hawking the world. I like that actually terminology. I think that's awesome. Being able to not only effectively hunt, but effectively observe as a key portion of that. Not just be able to chase after things, but being able to watch and wait for your timing, which is 100%. Now, I got a couple comments here, and then I want to go around again. Satch jumped in here. Good morning, team. Good to see you. I'm excited to see and hear Salty. Let's go. Absolutely. We got DogTube. Hello, friends. Hello. Alan Shabaro is in here. Good to see you, buddy. Hello, y'all. Can't wait to talk to you. I'm going to get you back on the collective soon. Don't worry, buddy. Now, I want to get some thoughts directly on what Shaun just said in hawking the world in that modality. But I also want to kind of come at it from a position of breaking the cycle, because I think this is probably some of the hardest, I can't say the hardest challenging, but hardest challenges. But the idea of stepping into the void, breaking something that you have, a habit that you've had for years, and stepping into something completely new from that from that point of view. Salty, thoughts on this?
Um, I look at it from 2 points, right? And Seb touched on it, and we want to break the cycle, but we don't want to take away their ability to make their own mistakes, right? We need to make sure that we clear the path, but we clear the path for them to find their own rocks on the road, right? And then the other piece is ensuring that whether it's like children, or whether it's subordinates, or whether it's the people around you, whether it's your loved ones, right? Ensuring that they've got the support and they see the actions taken to move forward. And they understand how you're observing that pattern of life and making those decision points as you move forward towards it, right? So that's that hawking piece, or that hunting piece. Right? If you treat it like planning out an operation where you're like, okay, this is my end state. How do I work backwards from my end state? And I find those points. You are likely to find your deltas and build them in and take that piece forward as you go. And that leaves you with, I think, a clearer path, or a clearer sight. And if people are watching you do this and they're interpreting it in the right manner, right? They're not just mimicking you. They're actually seeing you lead from the front, and they're seeing the example set, and they're looking to create their own example based on that leadership, that drive forward. I think that's what we're looking for.
Absolutely. Seb, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, if you, I really like the hawking the world, and I think that the way I would describe it at this point would be poise. I think we lack poise. We're often very, very quick to make decisions and to make moves and to commit to something, whether it's a thought process or some bandwagon going by or whatever the case may be. And I think that we would, as we would when we, return the old hockey email, when somebody does something and all of a sudden it flares us up. And I think that there is extreme value in sitting there for a little bit to perhaps even not only process what we're actually looking at, but also process our external reaction to it. How am I going to react to this? And what's the appropriate reaction in light of and when I say the appropriate reaction, and that's the reaction that's going to make either things better or neutral to a certain state of homeostasis, and not create so much negative emotions as a result of, tossing a hand grenade, so to speak. And so, it's really interesting to me, and I don't know if I should say this, but I will. When I first watched the video, one of the things that's quite apparent for me is that there is a lot of emotions there, being communicated, and to a certain extent, in the motivational speaking world, this is a tool that works really well to fire up people and light a fire under people and motivate them, in the moment. I do like a little bit less emotions when it comes to things, because for me, as soon as we start injecting a lot of emotions in something, we start tainting it to a certain extent. So it's important to have the emotion, to recognize them. I say this every time, but I think it's important not to discount emotion of how we feel about certain things. But it's also important to disconnect from that, so we can have a rational conversation about the actions that we are taking, say, as parents, and how it impacts our family, but necessarily bringing it in a way that's very sort of emotional, and it to me just fuels the people that are very likely to have a negative emotional reaction to what's being said. Whereas we can have the same conversation and reach a lot more people if there's a little bit more poison there. So I know it's a bit of a departure from what the question was, but in relation to what Shaun said, I really like that, because how many times do we actually take the time to just take a tactical pause before making a move, or before committing to a thought, or before engaging a conversation, or whatever the case may be. And I think that there's extreme value in that.
I could not agree more. I was picturing exactly what you were talking about as you were talking about it, to have it like a. It was kind of hilarious, but and it goes into our next video, so I'm not going to get too deep into that because it's going to be awesome. Shaun, you got thoughts on this?
Just a quick wrap out of my thoughts. And so two things. One is I'm in agreement with Seb that the moment, well, not the moment, but within a matter of seconds, I was losing interest in the speaker because she's not my cup of tea. And that's nothing personal. It's just how she delivers her message. I don't need the additional emotion for me to engage in listening to someone. If they can talk calmly and clearly and perhaps directly to the subject, that gains my interest. Add on layers and layers of emotion, and I start to lose interest. Now, I'm not throwing her under the bus because I've done it myself. Sometimes when I'm speaking, if I am engaged in the topic and I'm starting to get excited about the fact that we're all going to reach the finish line together, sometimes my voice starts elevating, sometimes the tonality, sometimes things shift, man. And so, when you're in the moment, sometimes it's hard to see the shifts, the little micro shifts that you're deploying over the space of 5, 10, 15 minutes during a keynote speaking moment, perhaps like she was. But it's only after reflection. And that's why I always review my own content that I put out. It's only after reflection that you see that, wow, I was incrementally picking up the pace in my delivery, and it wasn't appropriate. And so it's reflection that creates the best learning after you've delivered those kind of speeches. So hopefully she had a chance to review her thing and maybe just dial it down a little bit so that people like myself would be more interested, or not. I mean, it's her journey. And so the second thing that I was thinking is, if we're delivering information out to masses, or if we are considering information that's coming in from the masses, this is how I do things. When I said a hunting falcon, it's not something that it's a new idea in my head. It's an image that popped into my head today, but it's a thought that I've had for a long time. I do consider myself as a bit of a hunting bird. I do like to observe the world with a hunting gaze. And so something that some people struggle with me anyway, is I'll hunt the world silently, make my observations, make my determinations. And then when something occurs in real time and I go, bam, no way, man. If I say that, it's not because I'm doing a knee-jerk reaction. It's because I've been hunting that topic for weeks, months, years, perhaps. And so if I'm fast on my delivery, if I'm direct with my intention, if I say something that makes someone take one step back, it's not because I just invented the idea in my head 3 seconds ago. It's probably me being direct on something that I've deeply thought about for a long time. And I have a direct way. And sometimes that's not the right way. And I apologize to everyone out there that I've offended because I'm very direct at times, but that is my way. And if you know me, you know that that's who I am. I have to figure out a way to shape that so it's not quite as much in people's grills. So I try to deliver the message to people that I think can take the heat of the moment. And if I feel that they don't know me well enough, then I try to spray a bit of water on my message so it's not quite as direct and fiery. That's my thing that I have to get better at. But for people out there who are direct, they can be direct because they've given it no thought, or they can be direct because they've been hunting the world for a long time. That's my thought.
That is a beautiful point. The thing that kept coming up in my mind as you were talking was the fact that it's an old adage that comes from from back in the day on the ranch, but you can use a wrench just as well as you can use a hammer. You can both drive a nail in, but unless you take the time to realize that a hammer is a better tool for that job, you'll just keep using a wrench. And emotion can be used as a tool. And if you're delivering with emotion in the right time, in the right manner to the right people, you can spark change, but it needs to be consistently evaluated. I love that. Any other thoughts before we jump into the next video here? I just want to get a quick look. Everybody good? All right. Just want to hit this up as well. United Rentals Tonka Truck, morning crew. Good to see you, buddy. And I got some other comments here with a question in there, and we'll get that in a second, but I want to jump into this. This next video takes us kind of into the realm of once you're already doing the work, it's that kind of evaluation phase. So here we go.
I internalize a lot of things, and so I try to find spaces where I can just sit and think, sit and feel, be quiet. If I have to work something out, what am I feeling? You know, I like to, just sit, think, stare out the window, maybe jump on a motorcycle, kind of ask myself, what are you thinking? Why are you feeling that? And if it's distressful, like, why? What do you want? What's going on?
Do you usually get to the bottom of it when you're doing that?
Yeah, sometimes, or I see the bottom and I'm like, well, okay, I'll just lean into my coping mechanism. Coming out of that is some form of communication. Communicating it to yourself, communicating it to someone else, which could be sharing or looking for, like you're talking about therapy, so having a reflection or someone to listen who might have different perspectives. We'll call it professional perspectives, tools. And then if it's like really like, personal, like your childhood, or, what do you feel about your mother? Okay, how do I work on that? Acknowledge it and see and look at it. And what does that unpack? But that's a therapeutic process. But if it's just get through the fucking day, sit, be quiet, maybe jump on a motorcycle, hang out, maybe have a glass of wine.
I love that. It's a beautiful view of a person who's in the midst of doing the work. Seb, thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, I don't know why I have such an incredible amount of respect for this dude. Every time it's so interesting, just the way he lives life and the way he engages in it, and then the fact that he, lives a simple life despite the fact that he could definitely live a very complicated life. And you see him sitting in a New York train and helping, giving a seat out to people and he's wearing a hat and he's not trying to get attention. And, the whole thing is just great. So I really like this perspective. He spoke about a variety of very important concepts here. The primary concept and the underlying fundamental concepts of it all is introspection. And it takes time, and it takes you having the want and the will, truly the will to look and find the things. You can go to somebody's house and everything is clean. Start moving couches. I'm impressed if you move the couch and everything's clean back there, right? Like, because we kind of tend to do that, it looks good, but we do that. This is a very metaphorically applicable thing that we do with life as well. We tend to clean up our act, and especially in the things that are visible to others, that brings us a certain amount of external validation, but we're not so good at really getting in those little corners and really, really, look at the residual things that are still hanging out there and see how we can best address them. And there's only one way to do that, and that's to look into it. Looking away from it isn't going to help. And eventually what happens is, somebody comes over and starts moving furniture on a time that you don't control, and now your entire sort of dirt pile is for everybody to see, but more importantly for you to see, and remember that it's there, and it's a bit late now. And so the other concept that he speaks about, and very briefly, but he talks about perspective. And again, this is perhaps one of my pet peeves, and something I've repeated over and over again. There is a fight against perspective going on in society, and it's definitely not everybody, but there is a fight against perspective where we got lost in thinking that perspective is invalidation of your own whatever is going on with you, and that's not the case. Perspective is you looking at a situation and gaining perspective from it, but realizing that the invalidation comes from you. So if I invalidate my thoughts, or if I invalidate what it is that I stand for, or my actions, as a result of having looked at somebody else, that's an insecurity that I have to address, and things that I have to address. And so I think the power of perspective is undeniable, but it needs to be done in a way that's healthy. Now, one of the things that he sort of ended with was, I'll engage in my coping mechanisms, and part of me laughed because, there's definitely a variety of different coping mechanisms, and riding a motorcycle is an incredible coping mechanism. Drinking wine, not so much, but I know what he was getting at. He's not talking about drinking wine excessively. He's talking about relaxing and having a glass of wine. But I think it's important to point out that whatever those coping mechanisms are, they need to contribute to the mission. If those coping mechanisms are not in line with where it is that you're going, and who you are and what you want to be, now you can start having some issues. So understanding that it's okay to let it be for a while, let it sit for a while, let it simmer for a while, engaging in perhaps what could be considered sort of self-destructing behaviors is something that we've seen a lot, and I know in the Leo and military world, and it's definitely extremely egregious. Yeah, so those are my thoughts with this.
Yeah, absolutely. It is quite a challenge to not only understand how to when to use those tools, but which tools are actually useful, which then takes introspection, which then and everything kind of piles into itself. So 100%. Clay, you got any thoughts on this?
Wow, I think Seb kind of took everything on me. So the introspective piece, I don't think it necessarily has to be like a quiet moment. Like you're not looking for like drinking a coffee on the front porch in a rainstorm, right? Listening to Hit the Tin. For myself, it comes every morning, right? I get up, I see the sun rise. I take the ruck out, and I just kind of like push myself a little bit every morning. And that time, that 30 to 45 minutes that I have, I'm problem solving. That's my quiet. I don't have anything else around me. That's where I find my peace, right? And I stole that from Seb in the walks, and it has worked for me. I can answer questions during that time, and I can come back and I can sit down afterwards, tired, wet, soaked in sweat, and I've still got time, right? I grab a bottle of water, I sit down, I find that peace, and I find that calm in myself by burning off everything else, and I get to work through those problems. The other thing that I find comes out of that, and that's that second half, that honesty, that communication with yourself. And this is something Shaun had mentioned previously multiple times, all of you. You don't understand or perceive yourself in a manner that the rest of the world does. And if you're not realistic about the capabilities or the limitations that you have, and you're not seeking them and finding that peace, then you can't be honest with yourself. You can't find that ground. And I think the easiest way to do that is to be deliberate and challenge yourself in those moments, and find that moment where you find peace in that either that activity or that time, and actually have that full honest introspection with yourself.
Yeah, totally agree with that one. The being deliberate about it is such a key point. Shaun, thoughts?
Sure do. So I think that there's a couple of different states of existence. And one is that you have to form patterns of the world. You have to observe the world and create patterns in order to understand the world around you. The better you are at recognizing patterns, the more you understand the world. If you're not observing the world to try to observe it, to try to understand it, if you're just moving through the world unaware, then you're missing an entire state of existence. And that state of existence is called patternizing the world, really deeply understanding what surrounds you. But that's only one half of the equation. The other half is patternizing yourself, understanding what you're all about within the world that you may or may not be observing correctly. And so for me to patternize myself, I've had a process in place for a long, long time. Much like Clay, and probably much like everyone on the panel, my patterns are allowing me to get in touch with me throughout the day. And so that's important, because unless you patternize yourself, then you don't know when you're out of pattern. I'll say that again. If you don't patternize yourself, you don't know when you are out of pattern. I'm going to give you a real world example. It just happened to me this week. I was at Operation Pegasus Jump. And this year, the third year of Operation Pegasus Jump, it was bigger and more successful than the years past. But for me, it was bigger and more impactful because there was a lot of people that came up to me those initial that initial day, those initial 2 days. I had a lot on my plate. I had a lot of people that I was meeting. I had a lot of input. And the world around me, the patternized world, became really dense. Like there was a lot of things going on around me, with me. And so while trying to absorb everything that I was being hit with, that I was trying to take on, I found myself by day 3, like pretty wiped out, man. I'd absorbed so much that my pattern was out of pattern. And I knew that it was because I know myself. And so then I had a binary choice. Do I keep forging ahead, day 3, Operation Pegasus Jump, just pretend that I'm not out of pattern and provide for others on the drop zone as if I'm not out of pattern? That's my binary choice. And what I chose to do was take a day off from the DZ. And by taking a day off, what I mean is I rode my bike for 7 hours. I rode my bike out to the drop zone, said hi to everyone, and then kept riding from that point away from the drop zone. And then later that day, I rode back to the drop zone, said hi to everyone, shook a few hands, nods, and all of that good stuff, and then kept on riding. I needed time to myself. Like Keanu Reeves jumping on his bike, I needed to just observe my world again, my patternized world, not my internal world. I didn't want to keep thinking and feeling all the things that I was thinking and feeling in the intensity of the DZ. I needed to feel fresh air and sunlight and silence and the trail and me. I needed to be with me. If I'm surrounded by a bunch of people that want a part of me, I'm giving that. But that means I can't be with me because I'm giving of myself, not being with myself. I have yet to find the ability to exist in a dual state simultaneously. I'm either giving or I'm receiving. I don't do both simultaneously quite as well as I would like. And so I needed a day off from the bandwidth. And what it did, of course, was gave me clarity, context, had me reinvigorated, gave me a sense of things are good. I can re-engage tomorrow. But if I didn't have my pattern of Shaun in place, I would have just kept smashing forward and ignoring all of the warning signs, all of the red lights on the dashboard of, bro, slow your roll. You've got to dial it back a little bit. You've got to get context on this. You've got to let these thoughts sink in a little bit deeper. You've got to get context. And so know yourself in order to know what the right choice is immediately in front of you with the world all around you.
Yeah, beautifully put. I'm going to go around again. Seb, you got thoughts on that?
Yeah, what Shaun is talking about here is a very, very nebulous concept that most adults don't really embrace until they're 40, called boundaries. You know, and boundaries, for whatever reason, we have it in our minds that having boundaries is somehow selfish. You know, as we say in the law enforcement world, you're no good to anybody if you're not the person that you need to be when you show up. So I don't care how much you want to help the collective, but if you're the one that's in danger at the very moment, you will not optimize what you do for others, and let alone have the impact, the desired impact. And so I really like that. And you know, I wish that I embraced boundaries a lot earlier in life, and I was very good on certain things, but for the majority of things, especially when it included helping others, I walked myself over tenfold all the time. And I think one of the reasons why sometimes the outcome wasn't as great as I expected it to be was that I wasn't the person I should have been when I had the conversation. And so, I think that to understand that in order to optimize your impact on the collective, you are going to need to be the person that you need to be. And that means that you need to have a protocol on how you deal with whatever it is that's flaring up for you. And we all have one, and talking to Shaun and talking to everybody has one, and it differs for everybody. But I do too. If I wake up in the morning and I have an overwhelming sense of anxiety, or I feel stressed for no particular reason, or I feel overwhelmed, or whatever the case may be, then I know action A, B, and C need to be taken. And regardless of what I have on the go that day, I'm going to have to prioritize that, because boundaries are wellness. It's that simple.
Bam. Guys dropping mics left, right, and center. I'm going to have to start dodging here. Clay, any thoughts on this?
Oh, wow. How do you walk after that one? Boundaries. As a guy who's only started to enforce boundaries in his life, both personal and professional, in the last couple of years, I absolutely agree. And it's not about being selfish. It's about setting. So we talk about finding your why, right? We talk about finding your root cause. We talk about building patterns of life to push yourself to where you need to be, so that you can show up every day, right? You can put in the work. And I think part of that is not just finding that space and the setting those boundaries. It's understanding the root cause for what you want, that goal set, and setting the boundaries that enforce your required ideals to get to that end state, or to allow you to keep showing up every day and being that person that you need to be. And I think it kind of dips into both sides, right? You need to be honest with yourself. You also need to be honest with the world outside of you. Like when you say that's my goal and that's where I'm going, when you start breathing words and life into that, because you understand your why, you understand your root cause, your center of gravity, you're pushing towards that. You're driving towards that. It's like you're driving towards a target, right? You're on the range. It's a flat range. You got one target. You're driving straight towards it. You know exactly where the rounds are going, and that's your goal. That's it, right? The boundaries are your left and right of mark. You're not deviating. And enforcing that in your own personal life, and enforcing that in your professional life, and enforcing that in your relationships, I think is something that is needed. And I think it sets the grounds for you to be able to come back and build that discipline and build that sync and that peace for your future and for those around you. Right? It's the example you want to set.
That's a beautiful way to finish that. The example you want to set. I like this. Now I got any other thoughts on that before I jump into this next video? What do you got, Shaun?
Just that that's an important message. Set your boundaries appropriately. And, using Clay's example of a range template, we'll call it. When you're in basic training, your range template looks kind of like this. It's super narrow. Don't step out of that line or you're going to be doing push-ups. But, as you proceed in your career, you get a little bit better. You've got a little bit more room to play until eventually, there is no template. It's a 360-degree shooting space, as an example. And so what is the goal in those situations where it's a 360 shooting template? It's not like you're driving towards a specific target that is so clear and narrow that, it basically draws you down to the outcome. You're actually almost vortexed into the target because there's nowhere to go other than there. And so as we all proceed in our lives, in our careers, in our experiences, the template, in my opinion, should get bigger. And how does it get bigger? Because you push up against the boundaries. So you've got to have boundaries in place, but you've got to push up against your own boundaries. So the key word for me in this case is dogmatic. You can say, I need from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock in the morning. No one talks to me. No one, don't drop a pin around me. I need that time. You can be dogmatic like that. And what you're going to do is you're going to miss all the friction points in life. And it's the friction that creates the growth, in my opinion. So boundaries are great, but you also have to push up against your own boundaries and sometimes beyond to see that friction. to see the template grow until finally you're in a 360.
That is an excellent clarification. And I think, interestingly enough, my wife just came to me the other day and was like, "Hey, so there's this thing on Thursday evening, and it may coincide with the fact that you're a jujitsu." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, no problem. I can skip a day now because I'm 6, 7 years into it. It's part of my routine. I'm okay once in a while. Sure, yeah, okay, cool, no big deal." Versus being dogmatic, absolutely not. That's my jujitsu time. No one gets to interfere with it. At the beginning, when I first started that journey, that's what it was. 100%. I was not going to miss a class. And then later on, you get to a point where you're like, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, I missed one class. Okay, cool. Move on with the rest of your life." It's not like I'm not going to go to jujitsu after that. So I think that's very well put. Now, I have this one last video I want to hit on. And then there's some comments here that I want to touch on, but I'm going to do them at the end because they're perfect for what we're talking about. So here we go.
What's wrong with most of our athletes today? We don't practice to be great. We don't practice to be dominant. We practice to practice. What do you mean by that, Prime? I'm glad you asked. We practice just to get through practice. We cutting deals in practice. You go soft, I go soft. We don't practice to be dominant. When I ask you, what was your purpose of practice? You ain't got no answer for me. I'm gonna ask you, what is your purpose of practice? I don't care if you practice at work. I don't care if you practice with your relationship. I don't care if you practice in any endeavor you choose to do. What is your purpose for practice? I practiced to be the best ever. So every time I walked on that field, I had a purpose for my practice.
Bam. Another one with big music and emotion, but I love it. Let's get some thoughts. Seb, come to you first.
Well, Deion Sanders, right? What does he know about performance? This is a concept, and you hear this all the time. Practice makes perfect. No, perfect practice makes perfect. You can actually spend a great deal of time committing to practicing and being consistent with practice with almost anything in life. But if you're doing it incorrectly, you just reinforce how to do things incorrectly. And, we've seen that over and over again when people have an over-reliance on experience, for example. I've been here for 27 years and, I'm not going to learn anything. You're not going to teach an old dog's new tricks, so to speak. And yet for 27 years, you've been messing everything up. So you're just really, really good at messing everything up. So I think the conversation that needs to be had here, and there's a few conversations that need to be had with yourself as you're engaging in this, is just like anything we do in life. How engaged am I in the process at the moment? Am I fully immersed in this? Am I fully engaged in this? When I'm in the passenger seat of a car and we're driving around looking for direction, if something happened next week and I had to return there, have I paid enough attention? We're engaging in a collective, and am I engaging to the depth and the level at which I should? Am I listening to the level at which I should? I'm formulating my thought pattern while the person is finishing their idea. And so, as I normally like to say, which is one of the things I normally like to say is do all the little things right. It starts right there. And interestingly enough, when you talk on the concept of visualization, or when you talk about the concept of, it's used extensively in athletic, of course, for high performance, Olympian level and even below. The question is, in that visualization, am I visualizing myself in the outcome, so i.e. winning, or am I visualizing myself during the struggle? This is what it's going to feel like when I'm in a tournament. This is how my arms will weigh 200 pounds each. This is how my grip will be lost. This is how, and so having a visualization, or a multi-layered visualization, engaging all of the senses in relation to the event that we're partaking in, and the reality of each of the steps that we are likely to experience, is what prepares us for the performance in the end. Now, this happens on, tactical unit at the highest levels. It happens to all kinds of groups. Eventually, complacency sets in. It can set in, and it can set in collectively. And sometimes if you have nobody to measure against, or if you're being incestuous in your training methodology, or we're good enough, we don't need to go exterior. All of those things are are excellent reasons, and all those things are metaphorically applicable. Of course, you can, going exterior doesn't necessarily mean go train with another team somewhere, but it may mean that. And the reason why we want to do that, the reason why we want to continue to calibrate against, is so that those blind spots don't essentially become a part of how we do business without us noticing. And so again, if you look at things such as ayahuasca or psilocybin for some of the process that are engaged to treat, say, PTSD, occupational stress injury, other conditions, the biggest key component here is intent. You can take the same drug and get high and be stoned, and it has a complete opposite effect. Or you can set an intent that's exactly in line with what it is that you were after. And I think that we engage in life and forget what our intent was in even going to practice to begin with. We still have the end goal in mind, but we're not taking the individual steps necessary to be there. And so I think it's an excellent message. Why are you here, dude? Why?
Love it. Clay, thoughts?
I wrote down two things off that right off the bat. Bad reps. Make the bad reps count. And the reason to make the bad reps count is you need either yourself, you need somebody external or something external to identify those bad reps. So you can come back for every one crappy rep you do, finding 10 good ones to make that correction, right? And start to make that not perfection, but that progress, right? Proper preparation and proper training builds progress, not perfection. I don't believe in perfection. I believe in growth. And I believe you need to be 1% better every day. And I think that needs to be the focus. The other one I put in there, whatever your end goal is, making your fight the reason for your drive, right? Whatever your end state is, you're shooting, you're in BJJ, you want to be the guy that writes the best thesis. That fight that you're having with yourself and that fight that you're having to find the answers because of your own biases, that has to be your drive. You need to be able to identify those, and you need to be able to push through them, or have somebody from the outside identify them for you and be like, oh crap, really, I'm doing that? Okay, I need to fix that. I need to find that way forward. And that needs to be daily. That needs to be in every aspect, endeavor, and thing that we do. We need to have that. You need to treat it as an opportunity. You need to treat it as a chance to grow. And you need to understand that you are not the center of gravity or the center of the world for that thing. There are other people who either have more experience than you, have less experience and better ideas than you, or that they grasp it wider and with more depth than you do. And you need to pull from that and use that to find that.
Like I said, mics are just dropping all over the place here. I don't know what we're going to do. Shaun, you got thoughts on this?
Sure do. So on last week, or just over the last few days, of course, I was up in a perfectly good airplane, jumping out of it. And, I've got 370 jumps, so it's not like I'm new to jumping. But before I did my last jump, I was doing what's called a dirt dive, which means the guy that I was jumping with, we were both on the ground, practicing our turns, doing our link ups in as if we were in the air, basically doing the entire sequence on dirt that we were about to do in the air. Now, he's arguably a much better skydiver than I am, or a free faller than I am. His name is Adam. And I really enjoyed Adam's jump that I did with him. But as we were going up in the plane, my youngest son was in the plane, and he was about to do his first ever, it was his 9th jump, but his first ever self-deployed parachute, or a solo jump. And that means up until that point, a jump master had been hanging onto his pilot chute, and as he released my son, they'd throw the pilot chute for him. So it was basically like he had a fallback plan, if you will. He didn't really have to do anything except let go of the plane's wing, and then the jump master would take care of the pilot chute for him. But on his 9th jump, he had to pull his own chute, which means he throws his own pilot chute. So when he let go of that wing, that's it. That's all, man. It's all on you. And as a dad watching that happen, I'm going to assure you that ain't a comfortable situation. But here's what I took satisfaction in, that my son had been brought to that point by highly experienced and talented individuals that had trained him to be able to manage that moment. Now, when he let go of that wing, he pulled his chute, everything was good to go. I looked at Adam, and I may or may not have sworn when I said good. But then the plane door closed, and I looked at Adam and I said, okay, now I'm dropping into visualization. That's the only word I said to him. I closed my eyes and I started doing my visualization drills. I don't need to do visualization drills probably, but I always do on anything. And that doesn't mean that I've got to do all the motions. It just means I've got to do this. Close my eyes and see what I need to see. And I have been doing that since 1989, when I first learned about visualization, ironically going up in a plane in the Skyhawks with a guy across from me. His name is Michel Denis. I didn't know it as visualization at that time. I just watched him do it and I thought, what is he doing? And then a few seconds later, I thought, I see what he's doing, and now I'm going to do that. And so it was the following year, 1990, that the Skyhawks formally began teaching visualization. And I know that because as I was telling that story on the Drop Zone this week, Tim Turner was standing next to me, and he was the one who relayed, yeah, 1990 was when we first started teaching visualization. So I've been doing it for a while. I understand its importance, and I've taught it to a lot of people. But that doesn't mean just because you're teaching things, you are now the master of the universe. It's not a one and done. You do it for the rest of your life, no matter who you are or how many things you've done, how many times you've done it. Visualization is eternal, in my opinion. And so the point I would like to make is that if you've never done it before, you're only as good as the last time you did it. So I've been doing it for a while. If I stopped today, I would suck at visualization. You can always get better at visualization. It never stops. Every single day of your life, you've got opportunities to, in a split second, see the entire day in front of your eyes and then play it out accordingly.
Yeah, that is, again, beautifully put. The interesting thing made me think of a post I put out last night. I had doing Duolingo, right? I'm bettering myself in order to learn French. I'm not doing, I still got long way to go before I can actually speak it on air. Let me put it that way. But the key thing is that I had like a 900-day streak going right now, something like that. But I put a post out on 901 because it made me realize that it doesn't matter. The 900 is great. Good. You've lived up to that point doing that. But it's you wake up the next morning and day one, here you go. Keep going, keep learning, keep evolving. And I think that's in any area of growth, that's the key. If you wake up and it's your day one, cool. Come at it like it's day one. Any other thoughts on any of that? Clay, I'm going to come right back to you actually, and then we're going to hit Seb, and then we're going to go back to Shaun. What do you think?
I want to quote the clone piece, and I can't remember who said it. Right? I wake up every morning and I kill my clone from the last 24 hours because I'm 1% better, right? And I think you're right on. That's it, right?
There you go. Seb, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I really like the way that Shaun touched on that focus piece and the inherent limited bandwidth that we have, and having the ability to engage at something that's truly consequential and do so with all of your being. And in order for you to do that, you may have to set yourself to sort of let yourself be distracted slightly and engage in other things prior to doing something. But then there has to be a time that's allocated to remove distraction and refocus on what your end goal is and what are the individual steps needed to get to that goal in real time. Because I'm telling you, man, this is something that we saw, on operation. Like we would be planning an operation and we would be having guys back brief us and understand exactly what they were doing. But when you're in the truck talking about, your girlfriend and the night you were out or whatever the case may be, and we're now at a 2-minute timing to hit the target, I'm like, hey boys, conversations about any other things are done. Right now it's time to really sort of dive into what your individual responsibilities are and make sure that you're straight up with your timings, with the things that you remember to plan. Maybe you review it if you have time to do so, those types of things, so that when we engage in something that's truly consequential, potentially catastrophically, we want to make sure that we're exactly where we need to be in that moment. And I think that there is a misconception out there for people to think that if I think about what it is that I'm about to engage in, somehow I'm going to jinx it, no pun intended, and something is going to happen or something is. And again, an example that we've used here on the show a bunch of times is the airplane lecture, right? Like everybody's paying attention, all of a sudden they start talking about security features. Well, I'm here to tell you that the day that you have a hard landing or you crash a plane or whatever the case may be, you're gonna thank baby Jesus that you ended up reading where your exits are and all of those things. But I can guarantee you that failing to know that, you're going to be in a state that's going to be useless to anybody around you, yourself and your family. And so I think that the propensity is to stay away from the things because we think that somehow we're going to draw upon a negative outcome by focusing on the things that we need to be focused on. But that obviously is not the case. What's more likely to happen is that you're going to miss a catastrophic step while you are not prepared mentally for what's coming next. And so for me, this really happens, back in the days is what it was in tactical operation, but nowadays is before, say, a guest speaking engagement. Like, so if I'm like 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 minutes away from hitting the floor, don't talk to me. Like, I will engage in conversation, do all this stuff with everybody, but when it's time to hit, I need to go internal. So that I can refocus, I can do the things and get ready to deliver exactly what I prepared for.
Bam. John, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm super stoked that Seb brought up that idea of you need to focus up. It doesn't matter who you are, how long you've been doing whatever. There's a time and a place where just before you're about to do the thing, you got to focus up. And that timeline sometimes isn't even in your control. And if it's not in your control and you've only got a few seconds, frickin' focus up. Get with where you're at, look down at your feet, realize what's about to happen, and start kicking. So focus up is something that from an external perspective, sometimes it appears like it's not happening. Like visualization can be all of the skydiving moves that you want to do, and people might see that visualization while you're sitting on the ground on a picnic bench, as an example, visualizing. It's easy to observe physical actions in that visualization. But if you've been doing visualization for a long time, I can sit and have a conversation with someone, and as they're talking, I appear like I'm listening, and I'm visualizing the future in a split second. It doesn't require me to wave my arms around or do magic incantations. What it does require is you to start visualizing and do it for years. And eventually you'll get good at it. And eventually it'll happen in a split second. So bringing down the timeline of visualization is something that I pursue. I don't try to stretch out the visualization. I try to condense the visualization into a much faster timeline. And so even if you've been visualizing for 30 years, there is a point in every moment where you have to freaking focus up. Even in a split second, you've got to tell yourself, focus up. Now, I'm going to use a quick case example. If anyone has ever watched any mountain biking videos that I'm in, I might be shredding down a single track. Every once in a while, you'll hear me do this. And that's me focusing up because I'm about to enter into a section where I've got to get squared away because there's consequences in that moment. Or I'm pushing the pace so hard that it's like a tell. It's almost like a poker tell. If I was racing, I wouldn't drop my poker tell. But while I'm out there on the single track, Shaun with Shaun, learning about Shaun, what I do is I focus up, and my focus up is, and so if you don't have a trigger, if you don't have a thing that you can look at and realize that's my tell, that's when I'm focusing up, even if it's something as simple as telling yourself, I need to focus up. You've got to have something that triggers the action of you realizing that you're really focused up. So find yourself I'm not going to call it a lucky rabbit's foot. I'm going to call it a totem that you use to action, not just the physiological focusing, not just the mental focusing, but also the emotional realization that you're in it and it's time to get in it.
Yeah. I don't have much on that. The only thing that made me think of was the fact that that will be different for each activity as well, in that you don't have to have the same totem, the same useful. Because I remember watching you at Pegasus Jump a few years back, and there was one point where we were sitting, and I think you and I were chatting, and I saw you go like, and you just target locked somebody like it was on, and it was a go time moment, which I still remember. But I think that's a key point, is that once you know it for sure, but also realize that there's more than one thing, or there's going to be different things for different stuff. I'm not sure what happened to Salty. He just disappeared on us, but hopefully he comes back in here. Now I'm going to hit these comments, unless Seb, you got any other thoughts on that? Okay. So this came in from earlier. DogTube jumped in here. He said, I'm day 43 not smoking weed. It's been difficult considering VAC Blue Cross covers it free. Says, thank God for PT. In the last few years, I gave up a lot of things to change myself. I quit skydiving, wingsuiting, baits, jumping, coffee, caffeine, gaming, marijuana, cigarettes, and vape. Started eating and drinking healthy, flossing my teeth, brushing 3 times a day, respecting my rest, and doing PT every day. And thank God for his partner and a service dog. It's fantastic to hear, man. That is outstanding. You're going to change your life. You changed your life already. And then Quinny jumped in here and he said, this podcast has helped me out a lot today. I've got some hard choices to make, and the introspective piece of this conversation is great. Thanks. Awesome, Quinny. Any final thoughts, I guess, with Salty leaving us? It's going to come to him next, but if you got any final thoughts, anything we've gone over so far today?
Yeah, for me, I would say when we start looking at things, when we start flirting with certain things, we stay a little bit surface level. And Shaun alluded to this earlier. And eventually the goal is to continuously be able to take more on without expending that bandwidth. We've spoken about this a lot before, where I was suggesting that a person that engages in a course that has a very high attrition rate, for example, should be focusing on the next step instead of focusing on the 17 benchmarks they're going to have to come to grips with over the course of a training program. However, eventually that person should be able to look at the entire curriculum and segment their movements within the curriculum without letting what they have seen affect them. I'm not sure if that makes any sense. But we can talk all day about controlling the information that comes in, but we don't always control the information that comes in. Sometimes you are going to know too much, and when you do, you're gonna have to self-regulate how you address. So if you know you need to be incremental in your approach, then be incremental in your approach, regardless of what you have seen, and don't let your mind run away on you. Bring it back, and so. All of those concepts and all of the things that we talk about for somebody might be a very, very simplistic, action taken to deal with something. But just know that however good or proficient you get at dealing with things, you can always get better and more efficient. And so that's, along with everything else that we do, the process by which we do the thing is also needing to evolve.
Bam. I love it. Shaun, any final thoughts?
Sure do. So I'm going to refer back to DogTube, which I quite appreciate his commentary there. And here's what I took away from that. And of course, I mean, we could spend an entire podcast on that comment, and I would love to, because it was a great comment. But it presents a lot of opportunity to talk about a lot of subjects just within those several sentences. My thought was this: yin and yang, the balance of life, the up and down, in and out, black and white, all of that good stuff. It kind of seemed to me that at one point in his life, he was pushing the pace in that direction, and now he's pushing the pace in this direction. And so he's exploring his full battle space. He's exploring his yin and yang. I've done it myself. I've had a fiery pace going in this direction, and then I realized that I'm a bit one-dimensional. Now I'm going to switch my fiery pace to the other direction so I understand the other half of me, the perhaps more feminine side, we'll call it, of the yin and yang. Well, the problem for me, and guys maybe like me, is sometimes when we switch our target vector, we focus hard on that target vector and kind of not quite abandon, but really diminish the other trajectory. And so to be dogmatic on your healing journey can sometimes take you away or lead you away from the things that are also good for you, which is an occasional skydive, an occasional kicking some ass, if you follow me. Now, I'm not saying that DogTube isn't kicking ass. He probably is, or she probably is. But in my opinion, sometimes we all have to take a moment to just sit still, be a hunting bird, observe your life, and see your full battle space for what it is, and realize that perhaps you've only been hunting on one half of your battle space. That's my thought. Now, for DogTube, I would say that, maybe, just maybe, there's other people who are watching him or her in their journey right now. Just like people watch us, all of us that are on the show right now, they watch our journey. And so we all have to be careful to some degree to represent ourselves appropriately, but also for others. There's eyes on all of us all the time, unknown eyes. And if we're doing it wrong, people are picking up on that and maybe mimicking it. And so it's a responsibility to some degree where you have to be careful to live a good life, not just for yourself, but for others. So I'm careful to state that observe your full battle space, try to live a full life as best as you can. And I think generally speaking, most people understand that you are trying to do it for the right reasons.
That's a great point. And if they're looking at you bettering your life as the wrong reason, maybe they don't need to be in your life. My point. Clay, welcome back. He's back with us. He's made it back. Any final thoughts on anything that we've gone over so far today?
Wow. I missed a good gap, but that was a really hard one to come back in after. I think maintaining a deliberate peace, do what you're going to do. Like, I don't care if you're walking in the woods. I don't care if you're hugging trees. I don't care if you're going fishing. I got a buddy who does like 15 to 20 kilometers on average for the ruck through Ottawa. It doesn't matter what it is. Do it. Find your deltas. Find your holes. Get somebody else to observe you. Fix them. Be very deliberate in it. And understand your root cause. Understand your why. Your so what. Right? If you're going to be of service and do it for the right reasons. If you're going to improve yourself for you, for the right reasons. Right? If you're going to be a leader, be a leader. If you're going to be a follower, and you can't do one without doing the other. Whatever you're going to do, be deliberate. Hold that peace, that space, and that time, whether it's for you alone or for you with a team or for you with another individual, and have that there regularly.
Bam. I got nothing to add. This is just a beautiful conversation, boys. I cannot thank you guys enough. So Seb, Shaun, Clay, outstanding convo today. Winterstorm jumped in here, said fantastic talk, team, and Blue Bulldog says, bad storm moving through Ottawa and Renfrew County. Salty's probably lost comms. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Steve.
There you go. So again, I can't thank y'all enough. It's great conversation. I'm going to just finish it the way I always do with continue to learn, continue to build, continue to grow. See y'all next week. Chimo.
Chimo.